This episode is brought to you by Endless Comics, Games, and Cards. Whether you are a dedicated Wednesday warrior or looking for the latest drop of TCG or sports cards, Endless Comics, Games, and Cards has you covered. While Endless is known for their large collection of both single-issue comics and library of graphic novels, not to mention their monthly comic book club, they also stay fully stocked with singles and sealed product for Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and many others. What's the best part? You can set up a pull list online at endlesscgc.com and they'll send your books to you. So head on over to endlesscgc.com or check them out on social media at endlesscgc.
Hey, this is Tony McMillen, comic book creator behind titles like Destroying Angel Lumen, Serious Creatures, and Attaboy, and you are listening to the Oblivion Bar Podcast.
Welcome to the Oblivion Bar Podcast with your host, Chris Hacker and Aaron Knowles.
Joining us today is the writer-artist of titles like Destroying Angel Lumen, Serious Creatures, and an indie darling from last year, Attaboy. It is my pleasure to welcome Tony McMillen onto the Oblivion Bar Podcast.
Hey, Chris. Pleasure's all mine. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so great to have you here, Tony. We first connected on social media, and I've been a fan of yours for quite a while, and I'm so glad that we could finally get you here on the show to discuss your career thus far. As I mentioned, I guess sort of loosely there, is that, first becoming aware of your work, it was actually from Attaboy. And if I remember correctly, it was from, I want to say it was the Beat's Top 50 Comics of 2024, to which I immediately found Attaboy, consumed it, and absolutely loved it, like most folks. So
that was an awesome surprise. I was on the list, but also the list was alphabetical. So it was like absolute Batman Attaboy. I was like, I'm like number 2. And then I was like, wait, okay, well, that's cool. At least I'm listed 2.
Right. Well, I think the main reason why I loved it so much, outside of honestly how you masterfully play with comic paneling and video game tropes and that sort of escapism allegory that you've talked about while talking about the series, is how much time one can spend on any one of those pages there from Attaboy and also throughout your career. And because I'm not an artist, I find it sort of difficult to properly explain, your artistic voice style. But I also think that, and I know that I'm a fan of yours and Attaboy. So I guess my first question for you, Tony, is, in your own words, how would you describe your style as an illustrator?
The joke answer is from the movie Airheads, where they go, it's power slop. But I was like, power slop does seem about right. But no, I think it's very loose. It's very almost expressionistic, but it's a very kinetic style. I use a Pilot parallel pen, which is a chisel tip pen, so it has a big flat edge, and so I can kind of scrape that across a page. And so I think it's very it's kind of a gnarly style, but at the same time, the colors I use are most of them are digital, but they're digital watercolor, and I'm trying to sort of balance out how kind of aggro my art can be, and the color kind of makes it a little more light and kind of poppy. And so honestly, I'll use probably a million musical metaphors. I do play music, I play guitar and sing and stuff, but I think it's like, well, the reason why Nirvana was popular is like, well, yes, this is kind of a very heavy, gritty sounding band, but the songs are pop songs. There are pop hooks. There are pop smarts. This is a catchy chorus. So I think it's catchy gnarliness, and I'm a kid of the 90s. I grew up in all those Image guys, still love them all, especially Eric Larson, and I think he's in there a lot. But the biggest influence is probably Frank Miller and Lynn Varley coloring Frank Miller. And I think that, even though I think I've looked at a million things since then, that's the deepest in me that still comes out. At least I see that the most.
Sure. I can definitely see that. And I'm kind of curious, were you classically trained, or did you go to school for art? How did that go for you?
Oh, no. Yeah, I wasn't trained at all. Like I was like a million other people. I was a kid who drew a lot in class, and I loved drawing. And it's funny, like I occasionally will talk to other artists, and they have been trained, and they have a better vocabulary and language to explain things. I'm like, oh, that's a great way of putting that. Or, oh, that's the way it's put. That's the term. I was like, oh, this thought was your own thing. No, that's what we call that. So
sure.
That's one thing that's kind of, I guess, missing. but I'm also pretty happy being my own little mutation. And I think that's kind of fun in its own way. And I like artists like that too. And also it's kind of fun to play that game because some artists I'll go, oh, he must have gone to Cupid school or something. It's like, no, he never did, or vice versa. It's really hard to kind of figure it out.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there too. Again, as someone who's not artistic and has no ability in that particular arena, I will say that like when I see a style like yours, and I think that there's only one Tony McMillen in comics, but like, when I see something like yours that is like so off of the house style, and we'll talk more about this later. I actually have a question about this, but when I see that, I immediately think, wow, the industry, we are in better company when folks like you are making art. Because while I love, a Jim Lee, a Daniel St. Pierre, a Dan Mora, like these guys all draw the best Batman and Superman in comics. But like when I see your work, it proves to me that like the more voices, the better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I very much agree. And I wouldn't want it one way or the other. I want a diverse, range of styles and approaches. But I do tend to like very distinct artists, and I like people who are kind of unmistakable. I think that's really fun. And even those people who are unmistakable, but they have evolved through their career, and you go like, whoa, I really like this 15-year period here, but I still like the other stuff. That's cool too. It's like Bob Dylan. Like there's different phases, and that's really fun to watch too. But yeah, most of my favorite artists are people. You can just go like, oh yeah, I mean, there's no getting around it. And even like I love Jay Lee. And Jay Lee, he definitely, especially early on, you go, oh, he's really into, Simon Bisley. He's in the, Tex. He's got a few other guys in there, but they're still Jay Lee. And now it's like, no, Jay Lee's now become this refined, this is the Jay Lee style. And I am still a sucker for it. He did some covers recently for the Absolute Batman stuff. I was like, God damn it, Jay Lee, you still got it, man. Like this, I don't know if you do any interiors anymore, but any image you do, I'm really like just gobsmacked by it.
Sure. And there's a ton of great artist examples with that in terms of like with comics, but also, and I know listeners may know this, if this is your first time listening to Oblivion Bar, you're hearing this for the first time along with Tony, but I am a huge Daft Punk fan. I actually have Daft Punk right here on my inner, I don't know if you can see that, Tony, but on my inner right arm, a full Daft Punk sort of mural. And they're a great example of what you're sort of speaking on, where like, depending on which era you're in and depending on which album you're listening to, it's sort of a different band. You know, like Daft Punk, Homework from 97 is night and day compared to Random Access Memories from 2011. You know what I mean? Like they're wildly different bands. And I agree with you. I love the progression. And I think, again, if I'm going to use the Daft Punk, analogy here, when I first heard Random Access Memories as a young person, I was 20 when that album came out. Right. It's a more adult, I would say, more adult sounding album. It's a lot of jazz, a lot of synthesizers, a lot of guitar, right? And I always knew Daft Punk as sort of like this like EDM sort of house music type of music, right? Or pop, even when you're thinking of like Discovery, very like you can sing along and bop your head to it.
Totally, yeah.
But when I heard Random Access Memories the first time, I remember like very vividly not loving it at first.
Sure.
But if you ask 33-year-old, well, now 34 as of yesterday, my birthday was on August 6th. But
congrats.
Thank you. I've made it. If I listen to Random Access Memories now as a 34-year-old, it's easily my favorite, right? So like taste changes.
Yeah. And I think that's really fun though, to know that, something you might not enjoy now, who knows, 10 years down the road might be your favorite thing, and things swap out. And I also love when artists can kind of grow with their audience. Like, I feel like, obviously I'm too young for the Beatles to be like, I wasn't there when that happened, but like the Beastie Boys, I was kind of around there for that. So when they had new albums dropped, they changed their sound, they changed their philosophies. I was kind of growing up too, and it sort of kind of went in tandem. And if you can achieve that with an audience, it's perfect. It's great.
Absolutely. So, I didn't mention your rock and roll horror, the augmented fourth in the intro, but I do want to sort of noodle on this for a moment because you are also a published prose novelist, So as sort of a flip side to that previous question that I asked you about, like sort of your view on your artwork, I want to sort of ask the same question, but from your writing standpoint. How do you sort of see yourself as a storyteller on the writing side? Is there like a particular North Star that you often search for in your work, or do you sort of just let the story dictate how you write that particular story?
I think both, if that's possible. I think the North Star was always, is this story that I'm thinking of, is it special enough to be something I don't think will come from anyone else? and do I have a special way to tell it? And then that also leads to me like doing that second book of mine, my prose novel, An Augmented Fourth, which is essentially it's like if John Carpenter's The Thing starred Black Sabbath. That's the basic elevator pitch. But basically, that was the novel. That was when I figured out, because before that I had written a novel and I've written some screenplays and I had dabbled in some comics, but I realized, well, you should really make a story that works best for whatever medium you're going to make it in. And if you can, make that organically, make that choice. And I realized, Augmented Fourth would be great as a novel because I have this character I could do a first person POV from. And I was like, that narrative would be really interesting. And in prose would be the best way to do it. And after doing that, soon after, Lumen, the first original Lumen, was the comic book I was going to do. I realized, this will work as a comic book. This story would work best as a comic book. And I was like, that's what I was missing. Because before that, I had written a novel called Nefarious Twit, which one of the things I really wish I would have figured out is like I think it really wanted to be a screenplay, and I pushed it into a novel, and I can kind of still see like, you didn't really figure that out yet, but I had to learn it, I guess, through doing it.
That's the part of the growth of finding your artistic voice, right? I mean, I think there's that type of story with a lot of creative folks is like they'll start off liking maybe one medium, maybe they really love music, and that sort of evolves into something else. I know that was sort of comics for me as a young person, and I'm not comparing myself to you or any other person that's done, things in comics, but like when I think of where my love of, and I'm going to say this in like big quotations, art, right? Like, or like the sort of the appreciation of art, it started with comics, as a young person reading The Dark Knight Returns. And unfortunately, I was one of those kids that started with Watchmen. I don't know who let me have Watchmen as a 14-year-old, but there it was. And then I moved on to music and prose novels and all the other things.
Yeah, I mean, I was, I think 11. I read Dark Knight Returns.
There you go.
Maybe like 9. It was bad. But I loved it. It changed my life. But it was definitely. I'm actually, one of the things I'm going to work on next is a comic book which is autobiographical called Two Kids in a Trench Coat. It's about watching R-rated movies, listening to explicit music, and underground comics at a far too young age. So that'll be kind of fun. And there will be a Dark Knight chapter. It'll definitely be a big part of it.
Can I follow you down this path really quickly? I want to ask you a little bit about that because as a young person, we're sort of, I think, from the same generation, the 90s and such, and how you had to sort of seek out or at least be around a really cool relative or adult to let you get those things, or you had to watch HBO and the static, at 2 a.m. or whatever. So I'm just curious, in a world that we live in today, in 2025, and are you a parent?
I got one kid.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, like, what is your philosophy, if you're comfortable sharing, in terms of how you approach, and I'll say explicit again in broad terms here, how do you approach showing your young one explicit material? Because I have a philosophy, but also I don't have kids. So like maybe this will change once I have one, but like I have this really interesting philosophy, I think, that I'd love to share with you, but I want to hear yours first.
Sure. I will say your philosophy might be right. But I've learned everything I thought I knew was like, no, it's not really. In action, it's very different. But I will say my kid's only, she's just turned 6.
Oh,
and so there's definitely some things where there's a lot of parameters where I'm like, not yet. But for instance, she is very interested in things already which are above her pay grade. And so I think we got into the car once and there's a podcast I listened to talking about The Exorcist. And I turned it off and she's like, what's The Exorcist? Like, it's a scary movie. Goes, what's it about? I was like, well, and so I told her a kind of a sort of a Reader's Digest version. Like, there's this kid who has a really bad imaginary friend. Turns out to be a demon, and it's like some bad stuff happens. And it's like, and then these priests come and they kind of help her out. And she's like, oh,
they give her a big old hug and she's cured.
Exactly. And so it's stuff like that. But the thing is, I think my philosophy is that each kid's an individual. You got to gauge them, and they will change too. So maybe your kid at 7 is totally fine watching Predator. Maybe they're not going to be ready for Predator until they're 15.
Sure.
And that you might change your mind when they hit 9 and go, you know what? No, actually, I think they're something's changed. And so I think about like my kid is fascinated by monsters and scary stuff, but they've also had nightmares, and they're not ready for that's funny. The thing that actually freaks them out the most is that you watch a kid's movie, and in most of these story arcs, there's a part where the friends break up and they're mad at each other, and it's right before they figure out things out to come back together. That anxiety makes my kid go nuts. She can't handle it. She wants to walk out of the theater. Like when the rabbit and the fox aren't friends, and it's before they bury the hatchet. She hates that, like, that weird social, like, oh my God, they're being so mean to each other. And that's actually, I think, worse than any scary movie so far. And
what a sweet, sensitive little person, like that's amazing. I love that.
So what's your philosophy here? What do you got?
Well, again, this is coming from a complete spectrum of just absolute ignorance. But again, growing up in the 90s and sort of my mom was relatively loose when it came to showing horror films or listening to music. Like I'm watching Leprechaun, that evening. And then like the next day to school, we're listening to Bone Thugs and Harmony. Exactly. You know what I mean? So like my mom, she like sort of let me, I think in like a very loose way, indulge this kind of stuff. And I've always said that if I had kids, I would want to be the one to sort of showcase these things to them and talk them through it if it's maybe too scary or if they don't understand what's going on. And what really freaks me out, and it's part of the reason why I'm, kidless at 34, is they have all of knowledge and anger right here. And I'm holding up a cell phone for everybody that's not Tony or I. So like, I'm just nervous that like they'll get their hands on, a piece of electronics, or their friends will tell them a thing. And then like that sort of morphs their view of a thing. I don't know. And again, that's like being maybe a helicopter parent, but
no. I think that's totally valid. And that's kind of how I feel in a lot of ways. I just think like this will kind of come into action in a couple years. 6 is for me is like, there's still plenty of stuff. I'm like, nah, you're not gonna watch Poltergeist yet. But I have made a list of like the training wheels to scary and kind of explicit stuff. But yeah, my mom was super permissive when it came to stuff. That's it was when I think I was 9, my 9th birthday. She got me Friday the 13th 1 through 8 video VHS. So here you go. And she's like, fast forward past the titties. I'm like, sure, Mom, not gonna happen. But that was that. Like, and especially with music, it was like, who cares? Whatever. They would they would complain about how it sounded, but didn't really care what they were saying.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Like, and it's funny. I definitely knew kids. I'll talk about it in the book too. Like kids whose parents were not that way, and they were fun because they were like sheltered, but they would seek out the weirdest stuff on purpose because they had to get that out of their system, and they had no tools to deal with it. Like I remember a kid watching like Nightmare on Elm Street, and like he's like, "Will Freddy visit me in my dreams?" I was like, "You're 12, right? We're 12. No,
we're like in middle school. You understand that Freddy is not real, right?
Right.
Like, you get that."
I was like, I think I made a mistake talking to you. Like, what's happening here?
I'm questioning everything right now.
Yeah. So that happened,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I think horror, and I think we're sort of cut from the same cloth in terms of our likes in media and such. And I think horror specifically, and I mentioned before the recording here, and this episode will come out before our conversation. We're going to be talking about Weapons, the new Zach Kreger movie that's coming out in August. And as a young person, I think that like my love of horror comes from a place of nostalgia because I was young and it felt sort of wrong watching AMC during Halloween or watching sci-fi late at night. And like you had all these very explicit Evil Dead 2 is showing, right? You're like, I shouldn't be watching this. Immediately you shouldn't. And I think it's sort of morphed my preferences in today's world and my brain can handle it, right? It's scary to think of an undeveloped young person's brain watching Night of the Demon 2 and being like, holy, what is happening?
But it's funny. A lot of those films are comfort food. And I'm like, I'm watching Dismemberment and some really gnarly stuff, but I'm just like, I kind of, it makes me think about the old days and things are simpler.
Right. Well, speaking of the old days, I think you set me up perfectly for my next question, which is more Attaboy. I want to discuss where you were at in that moment. And, as I mentioned in that first question, Attaboy garnered a ton of positive noise for you last year. And I don't really have like necessarily a like interesting thought-provoking question about Attaboy. I just kind of want to know like, what was that moment like for you? And how did you did you capture that? Did you put that in a bottle for yourself internally? Or did you sort of let that wave over you and then you sort of wiped it away and just kept on moving?
Well, it's weird. Like it's sort of like a lot of things I feel like that happen are not as dramatic as I think they're going to be. And so, it got a lot of really nice reviews. And the book Attaboy initially, I guess 4 years ago, I self-published it through a Kickstarter initially. And actually the first edition was like this Marvel Treasury gigantic version of it. Which
It's 11 by 17, right?
Yeah, it's
incredible.
It's nuts. I love it. But it was also like, I didn't like lose money on it, but I barely made money on it, and shipping it. It's a lot of problems. So once I sold out, I made a normal size edition and kept on going. So I knew people really liked the book, and it meant something to them, which was great. And when I was making the book, I used to tell people about, I'm going to make this book, and I kind of give them like the pitch. And people were excited, and no one had been excited about anything I've done. And I actually felt like the weirdest, like smallest, like, oh no, like this is what pressure is like. It was like 6 people, but like I was like, oh no, now I can see like why rock stars OD and they freak out when like their album, I'm like, oh god. But it delivered, I think, and I was really proud of it myself. But then when the book came out through Mad Cave, like a lot of good things were said, and nice things, and insightful things. And so that stuff was great. And but what's funny is like probably even more like impactful, and it's kind of strange, is like not every con, but I do a few cons, and every other con at least, somebody will talk to me about the book, and they will trauma dump on me, and that's fine. But we get really intimate, and they're a stranger, and it's incredibly moving. It's sort of like my joke is like, oh, it's uncomfortable, and it is a little bit, but it's also really it's incredible. Yeah. And they'll tell me like what the book means to them. They'll tell me about their parents' divorce, and we'll have this like really serious talk. And it's great, but it's also it's insane. They'll walk away from me. I'm like, I know something about this person, and I don't know anything else about this person, but I know something really that's formative about them, and maybe they know about that about me. And I knew the book was personal, but it's a little strange when it goes out in the world, and you get that back, and it's strange. It almost feels like a responsibility in some ways. Like I don't know. I just want to be there for them, because people told me some things, and it's like, oh man, that's heavy. And I hug strangers. I'm like, all right, man, let's hug it out. Let's do this. Like, you
did this. Let's hug. Let's go. Yeah. Come on.
It's crazy.
Well, you're sort of keying on something that I've always found extremely interesting about, I'll say con going, but I think sort of the relationship between artist and reader. And I'm thinking specifically of comics in this particular instance, but I think you could attribute it to a lot of different mediums. And I go to at least 3 cons a year, Tony. I'm on the road. I feel like every spring, every fall, and one other time throughout the year.
Right.
And I go to these cons, and you see exactly what you're explaining here. And I'm not meaning to like downplay your experience with Attaboy, because I think a lot of creators get this sort of similar experience where these readers, these folks that I'll say, again, sort of broadly, don't generally have a ton of social interaction about the thing they love as much as they do when it comes to comics.
Yeah.
Like, I love comics. You can see behind me, Tony, and I know that listeners know this. I've got a ton of comics, but in like my normal day to day, like in normal Chris here in Indiana, no one, I think, really knows that I love this stuff as much as I do. Right. So these people who really attach themselves to Attaboy, this interaction that you're having where like they feel like they know so much about you based on Attaboy, and you know nothing, literally nothing about them. I'm so perversely interested in that dynamic, because it's special and odd and amazing and weird. And like, it's this really cool clashing of two truths that shouldn't exist. Like they think they know you so well because of Attaboy, and you know nothing. And yet they expose their underbelly immediately. It's awesome.
It is. It's one of those crazy things where like, I think initially when I started writing books and making comics, I put some pretty personal stuff out there. I was a little worried that someone from my family would read it and maybe take it the wrong way or whatever. But then I realized they're never going to read it. No one cares.
Mom's not reading Attaboy.
Yeah, no one I know cares at all. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to put out even more stuff. But now I have this. Now instead of that, I have this bond with these strangers, and it's real. It's very real. It's very sincere. But you said everything you said also is Comic-Cons in general, like you said, and it's crazy. Like there's a million people there who is like, we care about this stuff so much, and we go there and we got to get it out of our system. And everyone's a little anxious. Everyone's a little off. Everyone's telling jokes a little too fast, and I've been there too.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful in its own way, because it's this raw human celebration of something. Yeah, it's funny, and also it's funny every time I talk to other creators and also people who go to shows, we will maybe talk a little crap about other comic book nerds, but we all know we have done every single thing we were criticizing.
Yeah. It's one of those things where like you cannot say something bad about these people, but I can. It's like your little brother, little sister, you know?
Right, exactly. It's one of those things I've seen. I'm like, oh, I did that like a few years ago.
Yeah.
Thank God I chilled out. I'm like, have I chilled out? Oh my God, maybe I'm just, yeah.
We're just living in circles of embarrassment constantly. It's just things that we've done that other people are doing now. You know, like every nerd's done that. But I want to sort of sidebar on. I have a second question here on Attaboy, whereas the design work in the book is phenomenal.
Thank you.
And I couldn't find who the designer was. I can only find the handle at the beginning of the book, which was at Anne Ray Zaya. Are they able? Like, are you allowed to tell who that is? Or do you know?
I don't know. So so basically, like, okay, so they design like the end papers, I think, and some the spine stuff, and it's a mix. Like they did some stuff, and some of it's kind of the same from the original version, which I designed.
Sure.
But they designed definitely the end matter stuff, the back matter stuff with like the little like essay from me and some of that stuff. But yeah, it's funny. Mad Cave delivered a PDF to me, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." Like I was like, "Who's this?" And they didn't answer the question either. I was like, "All right, well, is it Alan Smithy? Like is there a person?" So, congrats to them. Yeah. My experience with Mad Cave, I have like one editor I really worked with pretty closely, and it was still honestly it was a great time, but it was very minimal. It was like we were going to add some commas, maybe we should move the balloon around. They asked a few things. I was like, no, I don't want to change that. And they're like, all right, well, it's your book. You still own it. So I was like, cool.
Yeah.
And it was super easy. And so yeah, I agree with you. I don't know who it is or yeah.
Yeah. I no internet presence whatsoever. Could not find them in preparation for this conversation.
I think I looked too briefly and I was like, all right, I guess they're just going to be like mysterious and stuff. Cause it's one of those things where I've done everything else myself. So I was kind of like, oh yeah, there's somebody else on this. And like, this is impressive stuff.
Right.
No idea.
Well, you also give a special thanks to Taylor Hendel. I hope I'm saying that name correctly.
Yep.
And a good friend who we're actually going to have on the show next week. Or excuse me, not next week, next month, Jesse Lonergan. So I'm curious, what was their involvement with Attaboy?
Yeah, so Taylor is my wife, and
there you go.
Yeah. So she's there. She's my partner. She's always there. She's listens to my stuff, and she reads my stuff, and just living a life of anybody is inspiration. And then Jesse's my buddy. Jesse's my friend. It's funny. Jesse's a guy who I initially saw his art online, and I realized we both lived in Massachusetts. And I think I reached out and was like, "Hey man, I got this cool idea for a book." He's like, "I'm kind of doing my own thing." I was like, "All right, cool." And then I was working for a newspaper, and I interviewed him, and we met, and I think we got like a sandwich, then we got a couple beers or something, and then we eventually saw some movies together, and then we were just friends. The weirdest thing though is that he's one of the best comic book artists working.
Undeniably. Yeah. You and I know this, and I think a lot of comic book fans know this, but not enough people know this, that Jesse Lonergan is one of the best in the medium.
I think that's going to change. And it's funny, back in the day, me and my wife Taylor, we both loved this stuff. My wife Taylor loves comics as well, and we loved his art. And he actually did the wedding invitations for us. He drew a picture of us dancing. And we always used to sort of lament, like, he's so good. If he can't make it, then what's the point? And then and then he made it.
Yeah.
And he's continuing to make it, and it's great. And like, so it's the weirdest thing is that he's my friend, but he's also an inspiration. Mm-hmm. And he's just someone I'm like constantly like knocked out by his work, and like his new book Drome is going to be, I've read the whole thing. I think it's his best work. I really do. Also, I helped name it, but also besides that, even without that, I think it's his best work. It really is. It's incredible. And so I'm really happy that's finally going to come out to like everyone. Mm-hmm. He deserves like even more eyes on him. In Attaboy, there's actually a 2-page spread where it shows all the villains and bad guys, mm-hmm. and that's directly lifted the layout from his book Hydra. I love that. Yeah. So I stole that from him, and he definitely clocked it. He's like, "Oh, that's nice." I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty good, right? Nice layout, right?" But he's great, man. Like he's just one of those guys. His work's he's still growing and changing. And I'll say this too, like everyone, the first thing you probably notice when you see Jesse's work is his mastery of layouts and how playful and inventive he is. But he's also really good at just drawing cool characters in action and storytelling, and he's kind of got the whole thing down, like locked down.
Yeah.
I can't say enough good things. He's a good guy.
Yeah, I will echo all of that, and I'm very, very excited to finally chat with him next month about Drome. So it's been one of those things where, very similar to you, that we've been social media mutuals. It was mostly because I was a huge fan, followed both of you on social media, and then like we were lucky enough to get a follow back, and then you sort of saw what craziness we were doing on the Oblivion Bar.
Yeah.
And Jesse has been nice enough. We've messaged back and forth, and he has agreed to come on to talk finally about Drome. So I totally agree with everything you said. And but we're not here to siphon off any credit to Jesse Larrigan. We'll save that for next month, for September. But I want to go back to you here, because if I found out through sort of the research for this conversation that you're also a podcaster. Yeah. And from what I could find, you have actually, is it 2 shows? You have Too Young for This Shit and 5-Star Autopsy. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think I had one before that was like a radio show, but that's years ago. But yeah.
Sure.
The 5-Star Autopsy, I should do another season of that. That was really fun. And basically, I look at different creators through movies, music, comics, novels, whatever. And I kind of go over their career and go, well, they had a really great run of like uninterrupted greatness, and then what stopped that? What killed their 5-star run? Mm-hmm. And so I'll go through like Frank Miller. I'll go through the Beatles. I'll go through the Venture Brothers TV show. Whatever I really think has a great run. And so that was kind of fun. And that's a one-man show. And part of that was because doing the other show, I had a co-host who lives in Arizona, and we had like 1 or 2 guests every episode and I was like, wrangling this. I'm sure you understand this.
Yeah.
Time zones and getting people. It's like, that's half the job. So I was like, I'm going to do a one-man podcast. And so I might return to both of those things. The other podcast, Too Young for This Shit, is about growing up on action movies. And that's really fun. And actually that was kind of, that led me to, my book I'm going to work on eventually, called Two Kids in a Trench Coat, about R-rated movies and stuff like that. I was like, I love the idea of kids watching things, maybe are experiencing art that maybe they're too young for. Because I think a lot of times they're actually not too young for it. I think some of this work is actually, especially a lot of these action movies that I grew up on in the 90s, they're basically just kids' movies of a little more violence. They're very simple, and that's not a knock on them. But yeah, you can get. They're almost basically all ages movies. There's something there for everyone. Yeah. Those podcasts are a lot of fun. I enjoy doing them, but I got to find the time. It's like drawing stuff. It's so much time.
Yeah, I don't know how that was actually sort of my central question for this, was like, how do you even have the time to do what you do with art, and then with the podcast? Because I have one podcast, one like, I would say, and I'm being very generous here, mildly like successful podcast, and that takes up so much of my time. I can't imagine trying to do 2 either.
It's funny. I actually was starting the 2nd season of 5-Star Autopsy, and I recorded half an episode, and I had to do something, and that was 9 months ago. And so luckily I didn't tell anybody the season's coming out. So I was like, I should go finish that episode at least.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, if you ever need any pointers for podcasting, don't ask us. Go ask. No, I'm kidding. I feel like I've gathered like a couple tips and tricks, but I'd be happy to help in any way I can. But and this sort of ties into this larger sort of idea. And I sort of hinted at a moment ago that I don't know if the listener knows this. I'm just now finding out about this, but you are like so into a lot of things, and I mean that as someone who's also into maybe too many things myself. And I know you love film, you love music, which we've already talked about. I've heard you mention, The Doors and the Queens of the Stone Age. You love Tarantino films. You love John Carpenter. Yep. And then there's one thing that you specifically talked about, I think in an interview, that you loved, which was Boogie Nights, which, that's an old timer for me. It's a top 3 film, and it might be number 1. It's generally like a litmus test for people, or for me, to see if like we have the same taste in film. And I was going to ask you sort of, because I want to tie this into Serious Creatures, which you've sort of have an analogy for as well with Boogie Nights. But do you find that you carry your influences from other mediums and let those bleed into your work? Or do you purposely avoid those things that you love and sort of take that road less traveled from a creativity standpoint?
I feel it's funny. They kind of work together, because I feel like certain things I do, like maybe the way I draw or the way I just kind of make a comic page, are pretty unique on themselves. So that makes me feel it's okay to wear certain influences on my sleeve, because it's going to come out through the machine that is me, and it'll look totally different.
Sure.
So I've said this on other podcasts, but I think it's really true. I love The Simpsons, right? And on the commentary, Hank Azaria, who does a bunch of voices, they're showing Mo. He's like, see, Mo's voice is just me doing a really bad Al Pacino, and he was like, Lou the cop is me doing a bad Stallone, and he's like, I'm a really bad impressionist. And I was like, oh, that's what I am artistically. That's
Sure.
I'm trying to do somebody like John Romita Jr. or Frank Miller, and it's coming out really wonky, and that's great because actually that's what I am. And so I feel like, no, it's okay to do like Attaboy can be like, oh, that's based on Mega Man. Yeah, there's a lot of Mega Man in there. It's not going to look like the Mega Man game, and so that will kind of balance out. Is it just pastiche? It's like, no, it's definitely influenced by something, but it's weird enough. It's going to be its own thing.
Sure. Have you ever heard of? I think it's a literary sort of study called New Historicism. You familiar with that at all?
No, it sounds cool. What's that?
So it's basically this thought, it's a sort of a philosophy and creativity where we all subconsciously, without even purposely doing it, let our influences, things we love, things we hate, all the things bleed into our creations. And I have an example for this, if you're okay giving me sort of a long-winded explanation of this. When I was in college, I wrote a Punisher short story as like a project. And I gave it to a friend of mine who worked at a comic shop. I was working at a comic shop in St. Louis while I was there. And I gave it to him to read. He goes, I really like this, but kind of reminds me of Garth Ennis's run on the Punisher Max. And it was funny because I had never read Punisher Max. The reason why it felt like Punisher Max is because through, again, this theory of new historicism, if you believe it, all the Punisher I have read, which is, I think at that time, quite a bit, all of that before, and maybe some of it even, definitely after, but maybe even some of it before, either influenced Garth Ennis or was influenced by Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon's run. So through all of that, I sort of found my particular version of Punisher because of my love of the character, which I think was largely influenced by his iconic run. Point being is that like we do this subconsciously. And I'm always just curious if creators do this on purpose or do they sort of just let their mind run and what comes out comes out?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really interesting theory. It reminds me of, it's like a good explanation for parallel thinking, because I think there definitely are things I've thought of. I'm like, oh man, if no one's done it yet, I should do it soon because I think someone will come to that same conclusion. Mm-hmm. And what's funny though is like, I'll have that thought, but I go, well, when I do it, it'll be this weird thing, my version of it. So maybe the other version is a more commercial version or not, who knows, but I can only do what I can do. But I think I do a podcast, like, 5-Star Autopsy, where I talk about people's, runs. And I've learned, especially in like movies where people are just trying to get whatever they can get done made, I've learned that I had this imaginary career in my mind, like book 1 is this, book 2 is this, and then book 3 is this. And I've learned, well, you can kind of plan that, but the truth is, I think it's more likely just the next book will be whatever is ready. I think of it, it's like a top of a stove, and things are cooking, and some things they're getting there, but they're not ready yet, and something else is like, it's boiling. It's time to cook it. It's time to serve it. And so I've learned that I only have so much power to curate my own a body of work, and I'm trying to make it as good as I can. And a lot of times things, if I finish one project, let's say I finished Serious Creatures, which was a very literary kind of book, a lot of conversation, a lot of stuff like that. The next thing I wanted to do was something full of action and less dialogue. And then after I did that, I was like, I want something a little more nuanced. These things always kind of bounce off each other. I think that happens to a lot of artists. If you, I do most of my stuff self-published, and there's some stuff that's been published, but I have the self-publishing. I have the liberty of doing what I want to do. I'm sure there's people who are like, no, I did, Miracle Man next because that was the next thing I could do. Mm-hmm. And then I did Swamp Thing, I did Punisher. And it's not that I don't like those books. They're like, no, just that was the next job. So I took it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. When you're creating something, you have to sort of go where the opportunity is, I guess is the best way to put it, right? Like you said, you can't plan book 1, book 2. You can't plan out like 50 issues of a book that's not even created yet, because you're going to let yourself down. It's not going to happen because of either the market doesn't want it, an editor doesn't want to hear your pitch, readers aren't interested in it at the time. Like there's so many factors, or maybe it's not, maybe like people just are not wanting it in that exact moment. Right.
And I think also, I don't know about other creators, but I find what I like to do is I do some planning and there is some scaffolding, but at any moment I could change my mind, and there's room to just to veer off, and I need it to be alive, because if it's totally dead and it's like, though, you have to, it's like a Lego instructional booklet. There's no fun, there's no life, there's no joy, and it won't get made. And so I think some of my best choices in storytelling have been when I changed my mind. And I was like, no, the characters are telling me, it just feels more like they should go this way.
It's almost like the story's almost directing you.
Exactly.
In a way.
And that's the best feeling, because I feel the most comfortable. I'm like, this feels right.
Yeah.
Even I don't care how much I plan the other thing. No. That doesn't. I'm done with that, and that's great. And so I think over planning stuff, I think most people are gonna be wasting their time, especially their careers. Careers, I think, are these wild, weird things, and I love hearing later on when you go like, oh, that's why he did the sequel to that.
Yeah.
And it's weird, or and especially, it doesn't have to be like some, like, oh, he's needed money. That's fine too, but it's funny. It's like, no, he actually went on a vacation to Paris, and he saw this pink umbrella, and the umbrella reminded him, oh yeah, and it's just, who knows why. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I wanted to tie in sort of our Boogie Nights conversation to Serious Creatures, because again, during our email thread, when we first started getting together to plan out this conversation, you sort of compared it to your series Serious Creatures to Boogie Nights without the sex, right? Or you said it was like Goodfellas, but instead of the mobsters, it's 3 decades in the trenches with special FX grunts, crazy directors, stuntmen, scream queens. So tell the listener a little bit about Serious Creatures, and then also what compelled you to want to tell the story about a 14-year-old special effects prodigy.
Yeah. So Serious Creatures, it's completely finished. It's 12 issues. There's two collections, 2 trades. It's the story of Bobby Feckle. He's a 14-year-old kid in the 1970s, and he wanders onto the set of a movie about a shark, which is terrorizing a New England town. And so in our world, the movie's called Finn, and that sets Bobby on this different course in his life. He's going to become a special effects guy, and he's going to become it as a teenager, and he gets a front row seat to the blockbuster film revolution that is Jaws and Star Wars and all these films.
Yeah.
And he rides that all the way to the end when CGI comes in and kind of, takes away all the practical effects, the glory of that. And so the reason this all came to be is a long, long time ago, I wrote a prose short story called The Malfunctioning Werewolf. And this is all based on a real guy. His name is Rob Bottin. Rob Bottin was 14, working on the set of Star Wars. They did a pickup shoot with the Mos Eisley cantina scene with all these monster masks and all these creature stuff. He was part of that crew. And so Rob Bottin tells the story on camera in some interview. It's on YouTube, I think. He's like, it's my first day in Hollywood on set, and so I'm helping things. He's like, I'm pretty tall for a 14-year-old kid, so I'm actually one of the he's one of the players in the band, the White Aliens with the big eyes. Yeah, he's one of those dudes. So, anyways, in between takes, he's hanging out, and some guy walks up to him and goes, "Hey, man, you're kind of young." He's like, "What do you think of this? You think this is gonna work? You think the teens will think this is cool?" And Rob Bottin was like, I think it's kind of stupid, man. I'm sorry. I think it's kind of silly. All these aliens together at a bar. It's kind of goofy. And the guy was like, okay, that's cool. That's your opinion. He walked away. And then Rob's boss, Rick Baker, is like, hey, what did George want? And Rob Bottin was like, who's George? And Rob tells the story just like that. And he's like, that was my first day in Hollywood. And he's like, George didn't get mad at me. That was just the way it was. I was like, and I heard that story. I was like, this is amazing. And Rob Bottin also did the effects for one of my favorite films is The Thing. And Rob Bottin did those effects. I think he was 21 or 22 when he finished. And the capper to all this was that Rob Bottin, after CGI comes in, he hangs around Hollywood for a little bit. He does the movie Seven. He does Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Then he disappears. And I disappeared. No one has seen him. No one in Hollywood has. There's rumors he's selling real estate in Florida. No one knows. And I was like, that's amazing. That's I want to know what happened. And so I wrote the whole story myself. And my version of things, it's influenced by his career, but all the personal stuff is either made up or it's from my own life. It's come through a really weird lens. So Serious Creatures, like Boogie Nights, is like one of my favorite parts about Boogie Nights is that all the people working in the porn industry, they're sort of a circus troupe.
Right.
There's this, it's like
all walks of life, all different roles.
Yeah. And they have this thing where in some way they're sort of glamorized, but they're also the dregs of society. and it's a really weird mixture of highs and lows. And I was like, these special effects guys and all the guys behind the scene in film, I think it's very similar. And I always loved, as a kid, I used to love reading Fangoria magazine. And when they show the guys who were making the effects, they're always the same, like guys in like Pantera, Iron Maiden shirts, like long hair and
cigarette in their mouth.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, who are these like scummy like kings? I love these guys. And it all kind of fed together. And I love making that book. It was like the first 6 issues I did right before Attaboy, actually. And I learned a lot doing those issues, and I was really proud of them. And when I came back, I did Attaboy and a few other things. I came back like 2 years later to the second half of Serious Creatures. And going back to it, I was like, oh my God, I really missed all these characters. I missed Bobby. I missed like Jack Barber, who's his mentor, and I missed all the weird director guys and the beards is what we call them, and all the characters. I missed them and their goings on. And so the book's I think it's a really unique, weird book.
Now, is this something that I know you have like an Etsy store that has a lot of your work that was either Kickstarter or what have you? Is the Serious Creatures series on this Etsy store?
Yep, 100%. Yeah, and like it's one of those things. I've been trying to get this. I came close to a deal 6-7 months ago, and it fell through at the last minute. But I'm trying to get Serious Creatures to another publisher and get it out into more stores and stuff like that. But at this minute, like you can get the series through my shop.
Sure, yeah, and I think this sort of builds on another sort of thing I wanted to pick your brain on, which is throughout your career in comics, I think majority of the work that you put out outside of Attaboy, which you said already was crowdfunded first. A lot of this has been crowdfunded. Yeah. And I'm just curious, we've talked to a ton of great creators here on the show, and the ones that we've had on the show that have crowdfunded a book, kickstarted it, what have you, they generally have nothing but loathing things to say about the process. Let me ask you, so very similar question. What was that process like for you with all these different books? And do you feel like after doing it a bunch, has it gotten any easier? Have you found a method, or is it still sort of this tedious mess every single time?
No, it's funny. I don't know. Maybe I'm not trying hard enough because it's not tedious to me. It's like I get it done. It's no big deal. Like for me, it's basically I can do the simple math of going. I don't promise too much when it comes to people. I know people will put
honestly. Hold on, I'm going to call you out on that. That's the lie, everybody. I've seen what you give folks for kickstarting. You give a ton of incredible back matter and extras and like all those things. It's really good, Tony.
Well, thank you very much. But I guess what I mean is like some people they'll throw in all these extra things like if you get the book, we'll send you a Frisbee and we'll send you this and I was like, well,
I want my Attaboy's Frisbee.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Okay, maybe I should make that actually. But all these things that cost money. It costs money to ship and to produce, and then they go, "Oh man, I'm in the in the bag for $3,000. I didn't make any money." It's like, well, what y'all made all those extra? What are you doing? No, right. So that's a simple thing, but also, I doing Kickstarter. It is like it's a little bit of like a pain in the ass when you have to like kind of keep reminding people. But what I like to do, and it's happened pretty much every one, which is I'm really happy about, is like the first day or two, it makes its funding. And then I can kind of just like chill out because like I don't need this thing to go so huge that I'm not dying to get this thing out there. I'm not dying. I wanted to get it out there a big time, but I'm also okay if it doesn't take the world by storm at this point. This is sort of just I want to get it out to my readers. I have a very small but really devoted kind of cult audience, and I want them all to know about the new book, and most of them are into it, and that's cool. So it has become easier. It's like, I know, especially now, it's funny. Like I used to always fret about the videos when you make your like, hey, it's me. No one watches the video. So you can just be really simple. I think the last one I literally was like, it cuts to me. It showed a couple of pages, and it cuts to me. I goes, money. And then it cuts. And it's like, that's it. I was like, that's all you need.
I saw one of them. I think it might've been for, was it? Oh gosh. I think it was Serious Creatures. And you're like, here's the first 6 issues. So why am I talking to you? And then it cuts to the logo, which I thought was really funny and really, that's a good way to go about it.
Although this all being said, it's funny. I do know that in general, I want to actually start working with a publicist to get whether I do another work with another publisher or another self-published thing. I think that will go a long way to get me a little more exposure and stuff like that. So. I'm willing to pay someone else to do the work so I don't have to.
Sure.
But what's fun about Kickstarters and stuff like that is it will get picked up. You will get some more publicity and more people will see it this way. It's funny because I used to be like, I just put on my shop. Like, why give Kickstarter some extra money? And it's like, well, they're a big bullhorn. That's really it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the fans also enjoy that process of like helping fund. Like, I know I'm a big Kickstarter person.
Yeah.
And I love, even when it's like something crazy that like, Skybound does a ton of like Skybound Boom. They do these like crazy art books and absolute editions of popular stories. And I'm like, why is a publisher doing a Kickstarter? But I sort of grown to, I guess, I don't love it anymore, but I understand it because you're making a very specific niche prestige thing in that instance. But like for you, I know as like a small, as like someone who's like a fan of someone who isn't writing movies in Hollywood or whatever, there is like a certain amount of pride that goes along with supporting someone in their venture. You know what I mean?
And that's how I feel too. Exactly. And I've actually, it's funny. What's cool too is that you certain creators that you've liked their book, you can see what they back. Yeah. And that's turned me on to other books. Like, who's this? Like, cause I love like Jeffrey Allen Love, for instance. I'm a huge fan of his. And if he backs something on Kickstarter, I'll get a notification. I'm like, what are they doing? Like, who's this? Is this guy good too? Yeah. It's fun. Yeah. It's fun to be nosy a little bit.
Right. Well, I feel like I'm going to start to close out our conversation here. And I feel like what I want people to really understand, the listeners to understand here, is that, your style, it truly stands alone in the medium. And I just really appreciate that there are still, again, as I said earlier, folks like yourself who are going out there and offering something different than that house style, as we mentioned in the beginning. And it's super refreshing. And, I apologize if this is sort of a big ask for you as our final question, Tony, but is there a piece of advice that you would give creators out there who maybe don't see themselves wanting to draw Batman with crosshatches and, tell those stories that they think people want to hear instead of the stories that they want to tell?
Thank you very much for that. It's a great opportunity. I love thinking about this. And what I've come to is that Keith Moon, the drummer from The Who, had this great thing. He's like, I might not be the world's best drummer, but I'm the world's best Keith Moon style drummer. And that, he was making a joke, but it's really, really true. And I was like, and back to Jeffrey Allen Love, I fell in love with his art and I loved his stories. And there was a brief, maybe 3-month period, I was really going hard to being the world's second best Jeffrey Allen Love. Because he had some tutorial videos. I was like, oh, you do this and this and that. And I was like, this is really cool. And I was really into it. And it just hit me one day. I was like, what am I doing?
Right.
Like, what's the end goal here? Even if I somehow surpassed him, and I wouldn't surpass him, he'd always be the guy who made that. So I just would be the second fiddle to that. Like, why? And ever since then, I've been leaning into like, if I'm drawing something, if I'm writing something and it seems a little weird, as long as I don't think it's really bad, I go, okay, let's explore that further. And that's kind of become like, that's the light I'll follow in the dark of trying to figure out what I'm doing. And it usually leads to like, okay, cool. This feels like me. This is, I don't know why, but this is calling to me. And I think that is me. And it's super, it's really, it feels really refreshing. So if you're an artist out there, I think everyone wants to find their own voice. And I think you just keep pushing, and you'll find your voice, and then you'll have these like feelings of like doubt or whatever. But when it's good, I think it's the best feeling. You're like, oh, better or worse, this is me. This is only me. And there's nothing, like, no one can take that away from you. And if you can get there, stay there as long as you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really cool to hear you say that too, because I think it's leaning into this common idea that we talked to. This is a shameless name drop, but we talked to Paul Pope last month.
I watched that episode.
Oh, you did? Okay, good.
Oh, yeah, it was good.
Yeah. What a legend, right? Like, so he's a total rock star. He's like the Mick Jagger of comics.
Oh, I was gonna say his shirt is like button down
deep
here.
V, baby. He had
so
that deep
good.
V, 6 buttons undone at the top. But he mentioned in that conversation that like he's talked to Mobius, he's talked to Frank Miller, he's talked to Bill Sienkiewicz, and they all say the same exact thing, which is don't do what I did. Mm-hmm. Go make your own path. And I think what he said, which is what I think you said in a very similar way, is that like artists find the most gratification when you can draw what you want to, right? Yeah. Like when you can finally picture it in your mind's eye, I'm going to do this, and then you do it. Like it's on the page. You see exactly what you were wanting to draw. I think that's really special. And I'm glad that you didn't just, try to be another Jeffrey Allen, Love. You were trying to do something that is totally Tony McMillen.
I think it's the way to go. And I think everyone too, anyone out there who's drawing especially, every once in a while, just remind yourself, your 12-year-old self would be psyched to draw how good you draw now. Even if you hate what you do, like every once in a while I'm like, fuck yeah, it's cool, man. That looks good. I always wanted to draw like somewhat good, and like I feel like I'm like somewhat good.
I tend to agree here. And, Tony, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you here on the
Totally.
Oblivion Bar podcast. And I highly recommend folks that are listening to this conversation, go out and check out Tony's Etsy shop, as we talked about a moment ago. It'll be linked in the bio because you have a ton of awesome things over there, and including some original art, which is incredible. I need to get myself one of those Dr. Dooms. We talked about this on socials, but one of these days when I catch you at a con, I'm gonna need one of those Dr. Dooms, I think.
Do it, man. They're good. They're fun. I love doing them.
Heck yeah. But I also want to close out by saying, and I feel like I've been buttering you a lot here at the end, but I just want to, one last buttering up here. I wish comics people, people in the industry were more like you, Tony, whereas like we've had the great honor of talking to folks here, a ton of like characters on the podcast, but I just wish people were willing to like try something new, right? Try something different with their art, not try to necessarily, and I'm not besmirch anybody for trying to get paid for their art. I totally get that. Right. But like when it comes to creating, I love that there are folks out there like yourself who are following that sort of creative eye and sort of letting that path go forward for them rather than, looking to get on a X-Men book, because they think that's what they wanted as a kid, So I just want to say that. And I hate to put you on a pedestal here at the very end, but like, I need the listener to know this. And I want you to know that like you are seen, and I absolutely love what you're doing for the medium.
Thank you so much. I honestly super appreciate that, and I think we're all kind of drowning in nostalgia. So any kind of life raft is appreciated. So thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. So I guess before I let you go, Tony, I'm going to hand it off to you one last time. Is there anything that you want to sort of say to the listener? Is there anything you want to plug? Any socials? Any of that cool stuff?
Yeah. So the good news is my name is apparently original. So if you look up Tony McMillen, everythingisme.com, Instagram, there's no added numbers, whatever, Tony McMillen. I will say I just finished the last issue of Destroying Angel Lumen, which is my long-awaited sequel to my original comic book Lumen. It's really, really nuts. It's really fun, really wild and colorful. That's available at my Etsy shop. It will be collected in October as one big humongous trade. It's like 220 pages.
Wow.
It's intense, but it's really fun. I'm really proud of that. So, and also I have a Patreon. You can see some new stuff I'm working on there. And just in general, thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all my people who buy my stuff already. I always appreciate it.
Yeah. Which in your handle, is it just like Tony McMillen on all the socials?
Yeah, it really is. It's so simple. It's like you can find me real easy.
Perfect. Well, cool. Tony, what a pleasure. Thank you so much. We'll have you back on at some point down the road, and have a great time until the next time.
Thank you very much. You too.